I graduated, believing I had finally earned my place in my family. The degree. The years of loyalty. The sacrifices no one saw. But when I looked into the crowd that day, the seats reserved for my parents were empty. I told myself it didn't mean anything until a casual conversation days later revealed the truth. While I was working toward the future they promised me, my parents had already given our family business to my sister. No meeting. No warning. And when I asked my mother why, she said one sentence that quietly rewrote my entire life. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about success. It was about erasure. My name is Elena Brooks, and the day I graduated was supposed to be the day everything finally made sense. The stadium was already buzzing when I took my seat, families waving from the stands, phones raised, flowers clutched in trembling hands. I scanned the rows instinctively, my eyes moving to the section marked reserved for family. I spotted familiar faces everywhere except where mine should have been. Empty seats. Clean. Unclaimed. I told myself they were running late. My parents, Martin and Claire Brooks, were always late. My younger sister, Vanessa, hated crowds. There were a dozen reasonable explanations, and I cycled through all of them as the ceremony began. When my name was called, Elena Brooks, Bachelor of Business Administration, the applause swelled around me. I stood, smoothed my gown, and walked across the stage with a smile that felt practiced, almost borrowed. The dean shook my hand. A photographer snapped a photo. Somewhere behind me, families cheered loudly for their children. No one cheered for me. I looked out once more, just in case. The seats were still empty. After the ceremony, graduates clustered together, posing with parents and siblings. Bouquets changed hands. Tears flowed freely. I stood near the edge of the crowd, holding my diploma folder too tightly, pretending to scroll through my phone so I wouldn't look as alone as I felt. A classmate asked, "Where's your family?" I smiled without thinking. They couldn't make it. The lie slid out easily. Too easily. By the time I reached my car, the excitement had drained out of me, leaving behind a quiet ache I couldn't name yet. I sat there for a moment, listening to distant laughter echo across the parking lot, and tried to convince myself this didn't mean anything. I didn't know then that this absence wasn't an accident. It was the first sign that something far more important had already been decided without me. Long before I understood what ownership meant, I understood expectation. Some of my earliest memories are tied to Brooks & Co., the family manufacturing business my parents built from the ground up. While other kids spent their summers at the pool, I spent mine in the back office, sorting invoices, filing paperwork, listening to the steady hum of machines through the walls. My father, Martin Brooks, liked to say it was good for me, character building, he called it. My mother, Claire, was more direct. "One day, this will all be yours, Elena," she'd say, handing me a stack of documents far too important for a teenager. "You're the responsible one." Those words settled into me early. The responsible one. The dependable one. The one who stayed late, learned fast, and didn't complain. By high school, I could read a balance sheet better than most adults. In college, I chose business administration without hesitation, tailoring my classes toward operations, finance, and logistics, everything the company would need next. Every internship, every project, every late night was done with one future in mind. Coming back home. Taking over. Protecting what my parents had built. Vanessa never shared that interest. My younger sister drifted in and out of the business, helping only when it suited her. My parents brushed it off. "She's still finding herself," they'd say. "You were always different." Different meant reliable. It meant being consulted but not celebrated. Trusted but rarely thanked. Still, I believed in the promise. I believed that when the time came, effort would matter. That loyalty would be rewarded. That family meant continuity. Graduation wasn't just an ending to me, it was proof. Proof that I had done everything right. That I had earned my place. I didn't realize then that promises made early are often the easiest ones to quietly break, and that the future I'd built my life around already belonged to someone else. I didn't find out the truth in a dramatic confrontation or a family meeting. I found out by accident. 3 days after graduation, I stopped by the office at Brooks & Co. to drop off some paperwork my father had asked for weeks earlier. The building felt the same, familiar, almost comforting. The receptionist smiled and congratulated me, asking when I'd be starting full-time. Soon, I said automatically. I was walking past the conference room when I heard my mother's voice through the half-open door. "We finalized the transfer last quarter," she said calmly. "It's cleaner this way." I slowed without meaning to. Inside, my parents sat with our accountant. A set of folders lay open on the table, my sister's name printed neatly across the top. Vanessa Brooks. Managing Director. My breath caught. "Vanessa?" the accountant asked. "She's aware of the responsibility?" My father chuckled. "She'll grow into it. Elena's been helping for years anyway. She knows how things run." They spoke as if I wasn't standing just outside the door. As if I wasn't part of the conversation at all. I didn't interrupt. I didn't walk in. I stood there, frozen, while the words settled into something solid and irreversible. The transfer had already happened. Months ago. No discussion. No warning. No explanation. I walked out of the building quietly, my graduation dress still hanging in my car, suddenly feeling like a costume I'd worn for the wrong future. The promise I had believed in wasn't revoked, it was simply reassigned. And I realized something then that hurt more than the betrayal itself. They hadn't forgotten to tell me. They just hadn't thought I needed to know. I didn't confront my parents right away. I needed a night to make sure I wasn't overreacting, to convince myself there had been some misunderstanding. By the next morning, denial had worn thin. I went to my parents' house just after lunch. My mother, Claire, was in the kitchen, folding laundry with the television humming softly in the background. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You should have told me you were stopping by." "I heard about the transfer," I said. The smile didn't disappear, but it changed. She finished folding the towel in her hands before answering. "You weren't supposed to hear it like that." That was the first thing she said. Not "I'm sorry." Not "let's talk." Just that. "So it's true," I replied. "You gave the business to Vanessa." Claire sighed, as if I'd brought up something inconvenient. "We didn't give it to her. We positioned her." "For what?" I asked. "I've been preparing for this my entire life." She finally met my eyes. "And that's exactly why you'll be fine." As works options. The sentence landed wrong. "Vanessa needs stability," she continued. "You're more capable. More independent. You don't need ownership to prove yourself." Ownership. The word felt suddenly inappropriate, almost greedy, the way she said it. What was I preparing for, then? I asked quietly. My father, Martin, stepped in from the hallway, already defensive. "This isn't about fairness, Elena. It's about practicality." Practicality meant decisions made without me. It meant assumptions dressed up as wisdom. "You're still part of the family," my mother added, her voice softening. "Nothing's changed." Everything had changed. They just couldn't hear it. I realized then that this wasn't a conversation, it was a conclusion. One they had reached together, comfortably, long before I ever stepped into that conference room. I left shortly after, not because the argument was over, but because there was nothing left to say. They had explained themselves. They just hadn't listened to me. It took time for the shock to fade, but once it did, clarity followed. I began replaying years of small moments I had never questioned. Late-night calls when something broke at the factory. Emergency emails asking me to just take a look at contracts or payroll. Decisions my parents said they trusted only me to handle. At the time, it felt like respect. Now I understood what it really was. I wasn't being trained to lead. I was being positioned to support. I had been the quiet structure holding everything upright, the one who filled gaps, solved problems, absorbed stress so others wouldn't have to. When suppliers complained, I stepped in. When numbers didn't add up, I fixed them. When clients threatened to leave, I smoothed things over. And when Vanessa walked into meetings late or unprepared, no one scolded her. They just glanced at me. "You'll handle it," my father would say, already moving on. I had. Every time. Vanessa had the title now, but I had always carried the weight. She was introduced as the future face of the company, charismatic, confident, visible. I was the invisible one, the steady hand behind the curtain making sure nothing collapsed. That was my role. Not heir. Not partner. Not even successor. I was insurance. Reliable, replaceable, and expected to stay grateful. The realization hurt more than losing the business. It meant the years I thought I was building something meaningful were actually spent reinforcing a system that never intended to include me at the top. I hadn't failed. I had succeeded at the wrong job. And once I saw that clearly, I understood why no one had bothered to tell me about the transfer. You don't consult the foundation when you decide who gets to own the house. You just assume it will keep holding everything up. The sentence came a week later, slipped into a conversation my mother probably thought was gentle. She called me in the evening, her tone careful, almost rehearsed. We talked about small things at first: traffic, the weather, how tired she'd been lately. Then she said, "I hope you're not holding on to resentment." I didn't answer. She took that as permission to continue. "Elena," she said, "you don't need ownership. Family shouldn't help each other expecting something in return." Burr says. The words landed softly, but they cut deep. In that moment, everything rearranged itself. Every late night, every sacrifice, every choice I'd justified with "it'll matter later." According to her, it already had mattered, just not in the way I thought. "So that's what it was?" I asked. "Help?" She hesitated. "You're looking at it the wrong way." No, I wasn't. For the first time, I was looking at it clearly. Help is optional. Help is appreciated. Help is something you can say no to. What I'd been doing wasn't help. It was expectation disguised as love. Duty framed as devotion. A role assigned so early I never questioned whether I wanted it. That sentence erased the last illusion I had left that my effort and loyalty were part of a shared future. They weren't. They were simply convenient. When the call ended, I sat in silence, feeling strangely calm. Not relieved. Not angry. Just finished. That was the moment I stopped waiting to be recognized. And started thinking about what it would mean to walk away without asking for permission. I didn't announce my decision. I didn't argue or explain. I simply stopped stepping in. When emails from the office came in late at night, I didn't open them. When my father called with a quick question, I let it go to voicemail. I stopped reviewing contracts, stopped fixing scheduling problems, stopped smoothing over conflicts that weren't mine to manage anymore. At first, no one noticed. Then the tone of the messages changed. "Can you look at this when you have a second? We're a bit stuck on something, nothing major." Vanessa's overwhelmed. "It would help if you stepped in." The requests grew more urgent, more frequent. Still, no one asked how I was doing. No one acknowledged why I had pulled away. They just assumed I would return to my role once the inconvenience passed. The first real crack came when a long-term supplier threatened to leave. A week later, payroll was delayed. Clients began calling with complaints that used to land directly on my desk. My mother called again, her voice tight. "We're having some growing pains," she said. "You know how transitions are." I did know. I'd managed them for years. But this time, I stayed quiet. It became painfully clear that what they missed wasn't me, it was the function I had served. The structure. The safety net. The person who prevented mistakes from becoming visible. When I didn't rush back to fix things, confusion turned into frustration. And then into panic. For the first time, the business had to operate without the invisible support it had always relied on. And without realizing it, my family began learning the difference between presence and usefulness. I learned it too. Stepping back didn't make me disappear. It revealed how much I'd been holding together alone. The call came on a Tuesday morning. My father didn't bother with small talk. "We need you to come in," he said. "Just for a few days. Things are backing up." My mother took the phone a moment later, her voice softer, careful. "This isn't about ownership, Elena. We just need help. You're good at this." There it was again. Not "we miss you." Not "we were wrong." Just "we need you." For a few seconds, the old instinct flared, the reflex to fix, to smooth, to step in before something broke completely. That part of me had been trained well. But it was quiet now. "I'm not coming back," I said. Silence followed, thick and unfamiliar. "You're really going to do this?" my father asked. "After everything we've done for you?" I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. "Yes," I said. I am. My mother sighed, disappointment edging into her voice. You're being selfish. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was finally being honest. I hung up before the conversation could turn into guilt disguised as concern. My hands were shaking, but underneath the fear was something new: relief. Saying no didn't feel cruel. It felt clean. For the first time, I wasn't choosing what kept everyone else comfortable. I was choosing myself, without conditions, without waiting for approval that was never coming. And I knew, quietly and without doubt, that I wouldn't undo it. Walking away didn't happen all at once. It happened in small, steady decisions that added up to something permanent. I took a position with a mid-sized firm in another city, one that valued transparency over loyalty tests. I built a career without my last name attached to it, without expectations waiting quietly in the background. For the first time, my effort led somewhere that was clearly mine. I still heard updates about Brooks & Co. from time to time. Staff turnover, lost contracts, a restructuring that never quite fixed the deeper issues. I listened without satisfaction and without regret. What I felt instead was distance. Legacy, I learned, isn't about inheritance or titles passed down behind closed doors. It's about agency, about choosing where your work, your time, and your loyalty actually belong. My parents built a business. My sister inherited it. I built myself. That difference used to feel like loss. Now it feels like freedom. I didn't need ownership to prove my worth. I needed separation to finally see it. The promise I built my life around was never meant to be kept, but the life I'm building now is honest, deliberate, and entirely my own. That's the legacy I'll carry forward. Not one given to me, one I chose. If you've made it this far, I want to speak to you directly, not as a character in a story, but as a person who finally learned something the hard way. For a long time, I believed that loyalty meant endurance, that love meant silence, and that proving my worth required constant sacrifice. I was wrong. What I learned is this: being useful is not the same as being valued, and family should never require you to erase yourself to belong. If you see yourself in my story, I want you to know you are not selfish for wanting fairness. You are not ungrateful for setting boundaries, and you are not weak for walking away from roles that were never chosen, only assigned. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Do you think I did the right thing? Would you have stayed and tried to fix it one more time, or would you have walked away sooner? Share your perspective in the comments. Your voice might help someone else feel less alone. And if this story resonated with you, please consider supporting the journey by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and engaging with others in the comments. These conversations matter. They remind us that we're not alone in learning how to protect our time, our effort, and our sense of self. Thank you for listening to my story.